Introduction to 12 Mice in the Courtyard Box. Submarine volcanic eruption, crustal plate displacement, disaster called Dark Day, Black Death and Plague Ravage. A sea monster appeared in the Elster Sea of the Eastern Ocean, and the whaling ship was sunk. Behind the seemingly simple maiden voyage of the Victoria, there were also many bizarre and terrifying stories involved. Alice Ritasha. We drove into the fog. Someone is singing in the fog. Henry Jane. We sailed into the storm. Hearing the loud calls of whales. The Dark Age has arrived, and the status of the church is expanding day by day. Satan is burned along with the witches, and the black cats that will travel to the two realms will surely die in coffins. People sacrifice their fear to faith, but it is consumed by faith. In 1451, disaster struck and the Mineau plate located in the far north fell, with the northwest Pest plate falling one after another. In 1452, the Roland Getty Plate fell northeast. On December 1, 1452, the southeastern Leotis plate fell. On March 24, 1453, Mettlinson, located in the northwest plate, fell and was completely submerged by seawater. In 1453, all underwater volcanoes erupted, forcing the world to declare a dark age. Chapter 1. The Victoria Shipwreck. You are listening at novel full.audio. You don't know when it started to wither, nor do you know who the dull knife was cutting the meat from. It likes to hang its prey on trees, while you like to bury the spoils of war in the soil. Some people like to hear the trembling of the tomb soil, but forget to inscribe the epitaph on the tombstone. All the brown has scabbed, leaving nothing but the diffuse mist of water. Mettlinson in 1451, disaster struck and the Mineau plate located in the far north fell, with the northwest Pest plate falling one after another. In 1452, the Roland Getty Plate fell northeast. On December 1, 1452, the southeastern Leotis plate fell. On March 24, 1453, Mettlinson, located in the northwest plate, fell and was completely submerged by seawater. In 1453, all underwater volcanoes erupted, forcing the world to declare a dark age. With the advent of the Dark Age, the status of the church gradually expanded. Satan was burned along with the witches, and the black cats that would cross the two realms were nailed to death in coffins. People sacrificed their fear to faith, but it was swallowed up by faith. Christian of the Dark Age in 1455. Under the city of Christian, the bustling streets of Ada are dimly lit. Since the advent of the Dark Age, light and fire have become precious treasures in this world. In the darkness, a dark black palace carriage was driving towards Vincent's estate. Vincent Manor, built before Disaster Day, has a history of nearly 200 years and belongs to the oldest Vincent family. The Vincent family has been rumored to have descendants of elves in the early days, and has been friendly with the imperial court throughout history, making it one of the ancient families. Vincent Manor witnessed the passing of generations of estate owners. It suffered two major fires in 1453 and 1454, and was restored to its original state by a new estate owner. Today, the Vincent family is owned by Vincent Faust. Dong dong dong, the gate of the estate was knocked on, and a tall young man and a young man stood on the doorstep one by one, waiting quietly. Squeezing, the door opened from the inside out, and a charming blonde girl stood in front of the door, looking at two handsome men in military uniforms with a puzzled expression. Before Alice Ritasha could speak, the young man standing in front politely took off his hat and bowed before introducing himself. "Hello Miss Alice Ritasha, I am Officer Elia Willock. I apologize for visiting late at night." Officer Elia Willock saw that Alice Ritasha looked a bit nervous, so he immediately turned to introduce the deputy behind him to Alice Ritasha. "I'm sorry, Miss Alice Ritasha. Oh, if possible, please let me call you Miss Ritasha. This is my deputy, Daniel Lessa." Alice Ritasha looked at the two men in surprise, her gaze swept over the butler Joseph standing behind them, and she asked in confusion. "What are the two police officers here for?" Officer Ilya Willik is still on his first night visit, but the matter is urgent and needs to be dealt with as soon as possible. He was delayed by other matters earlier and can only come to visit Miss Alice Ritasha now. Officer Willik. Miss Alice Ritasha is so beautiful. Officer Ilya Willik felt like she was about to be captivated by her beautiful and captivating eyes. Officer Willik heard Miss Alice Ritasha's voice and realized he was lost in thought. He said awkwardly, "We are here to inquire about the Victoria Shipwreck." Chapter 2. The Victoria Shipwreck. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A letter written to my father on May 10, 1455. Dear Father, Officer Ilya Willik is visiting today. My dear mother Abigail, is she okay? I hope she is doing well, just like her name. Abigail, originally an ancient Hebrew name, means, the first joy or, the root of joy. Father, please don't worry about your daughter. Leotis has returned home safely. Please tell her mother not to worry. Father, Ritasha is afraid that you will worry, but this trip to sea is really heartbreaking. Have you seen Christian's report on the Victoria Shipwreck? My daughter is very uneasy and hopes to receive a reply from her father. Love you. Alice Ritasha. At the same time, the door of a sea restaurant was also knocked on. After a burst of knocking, only the sound of broken wine bottles and a few curses could be heard inside the wooden door, as if someone was rushing to come and stumbled on the wine bottle. Dong dong dong, a refined young man with golden-rimmed glasses refused to give up and knocked. The boss inside the door also became impatient, as if he had been tripped by something, and shouted loudly. What are you knocking on? It's closed. It's closed. Go eat at another place. The young man wearing gold-rimmed glasses became anxious upon hearing this. Mr. Bright, the owner of the restaurant, seemed to have no intention of opening the door, so he knocked harder and shouted as he knocked. Mr. Bright, I was introduced by Ms. Trina. Look. I also have an introduction letter here. The young man patted the door a few more times and saw the nearby glass window while shouting. He immediately took out a letter of introduction from his pocket and pasted it on the glass, hoping that Mr. Bright from the restaurant could see it. The youth continued to shout. I am Xerxes Hyde, a novelist from Dantrian. Has Ms. Trina mentioned me to you? Mr. Bright, I am here to see Mr. Henry Jane. Xerxes Hyde shouted and pressed his face against the glass, hoping to see through the inside, but unfortunately it was too dark to see anything clearly. With a bang, the door of the restaurant was opened, but it was not Mr. Bright, the chubby owner of the restaurant. The person who opened the door was a handsome young man holding an oil lamp, illuminating the pitch-black night. The young man had a delicate appearance, with an unhealed scar between his eyebrows and a pair of eyes resembling black grapes. Under the illumination of the oil lamp, the young man appeared bright and lively. He looked up and down at Hyde, frowned, and asked, What's going on? Xerxes Hyde immediately panicked and took the letter off the glass, handing it to the young man with both hands, saying, Hello, I'm here to see Mr. Henry Jane. Henry Jane interrupted without answering the wrinkled letter. I am. Upon hearing this, Xerxes Hyde's eyes lit up and he immediately extended his right hand. Henry Jane also extended his left hand to grip it, and Henry Jane asked in confusion. Mr. Xerxes, what can I do for you? Xerxes Hyde withdrew his hand and rummaged through a notebook in his arms. In a flurry of searching, a photo fell from the notebook. Xerxes Hyde immediately bent down to pick it up, handed the photo to Henry Jane with both hands, and said excitedly. Mr. Henry Jane, this is a photo mailed to the newspaper by a journalist on the Victoria a few months ago before his death. Henry Jane frowned in confusion, took the photo, lifted the oil lamp in his hand and leaned it against it. With the dim light of the lamp, he looked closely at it. It was a photo of a storm at sea. From the photo, it seems that the distance from the storm is not too close, and there is a flash of lightning in the storm, which is not special. Chapter 3. The Victoria Shipwreck. You are listening at novel full.audio. After reading it, Henry Jane handed the photo back and shook his head, saying, "There's nothing special, it's just a storm." Zaxby's Hyde did not take it, but instead leaned over and slid his fingers over the photo. He then pointed to the corner of the photo, a piece of sea in front of the storm, and excitedly said, "No, no, no, please look here, there is a whale's tail wing." Henry Jane's expression was solemn, and as he looked closely at the spot pointed out by Zaxby's Hyde, there was indeed a whale's tail, a huge whale's tail. Henry Jane snatched the photo and brought the oil lamp closer to the spot pointed out by Zaxby's Hyde, looking at it over and over again. "That's it. Such a large tail wing must be the monster that crashed into their whaling ship and killed so many sailors." Henry Jane, with a serious expression on her face, thoughtfully handed the photo back and asked with lingering fear, "Which sea area was this photo taken in?" Zaxby's Hyde immediately replied excitedly, "It's the Elster Sea in the Eastern Ocean. It was captured by that journalist in the Elster Sea in the Eastern Ocean. There's also his letter here." Henry Jane did not take the letter handed over by Zaxby's Hyde and continued to ask, "What exactly are you looking for me for?" Zaxby's Hyde carefully retrieved the letter and photo, then found a paper packet and handed it over, nervously saying, "Mr. Henry Jane, this is all my savings. Please accept it." Henry Jane took the paper bag, opened a corner, and illuminated it with an oil lamp. It was a considerable amount of money. Henry Jane's expression was not good, but Zaxby's Hyde didn't notice it at all and said to himself, "You are the last survivor of the Kettering whaling ship. Can you tell me what happened on the whaling ship? I am a writer and I believe this is a very worthwhile investment." Inside Vincent Manor, Officer Ilya Willett picked up the black tea brewed by the butler, took a sip, and went straight to the topic, earnestly asking, "Miss Alice Ritasha, could you please tell us about the story of the Victoria Shipwreck?" On March 1, 1455, Victoria's luxury cruise ship welcomed its first maiden voyage, departing from the southwest and circumnavigating the Eastern Ocean for a week before passing through Elster and heading northwest. The goal of this voyage is to head to the former capital of Gaza, the port of Christian, where countless nobles gather. It is a grand and luxurious gathering, as well as a comfortable journey. Captain Phineas is an experienced pilot, and his large Ricci is also a cautious helmsman. On this voyage, the massive Victoria is about to carry thousands of passengers and hundreds of cargo. This luxurious and beautiful ship, designed and built by the best architects of Christian royal city, sets sail today, stunning everyone with its beauty. Chapter 4. Going to Sea. You are listening at novel full.audio. The people on the shore were discussing one after another, and to avoid any disturbance, the guards set up a defensive line around the Victoria. The entrance to the ship was guarded by 2 guards for ticket checking, and more people came to watch, all wanting to see the beauty of Victoria. The crowded crowd under the ship was bustling with discussions, and a carriage rushed over the road. Alice Ritasha was about to miss her boarding time, but fortunately, due to the chaotic crowd delaying the loading time, she managed to catch up. Miss Alice Ritasha got off the carriage carrying a box. Captain Phineas saw her at a glance and immediately waved to her. Miss Alice Ritasha also saw Captain Phineas, lifted her skirt, and squeezed into the crowd, heading towards the entrance to board the ship. Miss Alice Ritasha hurriedly squeezed past, but unfortunately there were too many people. Although she was almost knocked down on the way, fortunately someone pushed her in the dark. Miss Alice Ritasha finally managed to squeeze into the boarding gate, but was stopped by a guard. The guard stopped her, and the crowd behind her was pushing and shoving. Miss Alice Ritasha looked at the guard in confusion and said, "Please let me in, I am a passenger on this flight." The guard, who was desperately maintaining the defense line, finally took a moment to look at her and said, "Sorry miss, you cannot board the ship without a ticket." Miss Alice Ritasha quickly found the ticket, but suddenly someone pushed her behind her. She reached out to help both sides, and the ticket fell to the ground. Before Miss Alice Ritasha could pick it up, she disappeared from the crowd's feet. As the Victoria was about to set sail, she had not yet boarded the ship. Just as Miss Alice Ritasha was extremely anxious, Captain Phineas had just witnessed the entire process of her ticket being lost and stopped outside. She stumbled down and immediately came to explain to the two guards. "I know this lady. Her father is one of the investors of the Victoria. Please let her board the ship." The guard recognized Captain Phineas and upon hearing him say so, immediately protected Miss Alice Ritasha by pushing her through the crowded crowd. Miss Alice Ritasha leaned down and crawled through the gap left by the guard. Captain Phineas led Miss Alice Ritasha aboard the ship and apologized as she walked. "I'm sorry, Miss Alice Ritasha. Everyone wants to witness the moment Victoria sets sail." Miss Alice Ritasha hurriedly rushed onto the ship with her skirt up. She should be the last passenger to board the ship. Miss Alice Ritasha smiled awkwardly and exclaimed, "Thank you very much, Captain Phineas, for helping me out. The Victoria is really beautiful." At this moment, a crew member hurriedly rushed over, seemingly looking for Captain Phineas. Miss Alice Ritasha hurriedly said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Captain Phineas. Did I miss the departure time? Your crew seems to be looking for you." Chapter 5. Going Abroad. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Captain Phineas bid farewell to Miss Alice Ritasha with a silly smile, and was then pulled away by the hurried crew member. As he ran, Captain Phineas turned back and shouted to Miss Alice Ritasha. "Please convey to Mr. Vincent Faust that Phineas is honored to serve as the captain of this voyage." Miss Alice Ritasha also waved her hand and shouted in the direction of Captain Phineas's departure. "Okay, Captain Phineas, I will convey it to your father on your behalf." Captain Phineas in the cabin was ready, and the Victoria gradually sailed towards the turbulent ocean. The people on the shore shouted, "Long live Victoria," and many people who saw off stood on the shore, kissing or waving goodbye to the family on board. The Victoria finally set sail and embarked on her first maiden voyage. Excitedly, people walked back and forth in the cabin, admiring the glory of this luxurious cruise ship. In the cockpit, Captain Phineas didn't look over at Franco and asked, "Hey, Frankie, what are you daydreaming about?" Frank turned his head with a smile and said, "That young lady was really beautiful just now." Upon hearing this, Captain Phineas's heart immediately pounded. Miss Alice Ritasha looked sweet and charming, but after all, she was a noblewoman. These rough and clumsy people were not worthy of her, so she immediately warned. "Don't be fooled by her, she's the daughter of the Victoria investor." Frank seemed a bit angry when he saw Captain Phineas more often. He tilted his head and stuck out his tongue mischievously, saying, "I didn't have any plans for her, Captain Phineas. Which beautiful lady is her name?" Captain Phineas was amused by his eccentric appearance, but he still pulled down his face and said very seriously, "You said no, you stinky kid. Don't provoke her. You can call her Miss Alice Ritasha, her father is Vincent Faust." Frank exclaimed excitedly after hearing a sudden shout. "Ah! What a famous writer! I'm his fan, my goodness. I even met his daughter." Franco excitedly put down the cup in his hand and danced, causing Captain Phineas to turn his gaze back to him with a strange expression. Captain Phineas stood up with a solemn expression and patted Franco's shoulder, staring at his excited eyes and warning him seriously. "Kid, he's not simple. He's the head of Vincent Manor, a nobleman among the nobility. The Vatican and the royal family should both give way to them. Don't cause trouble." After saying these words, Captain Phineas left, leaving Frank with one more person in the cockpit to continue the course. Franco immediately became serious and saluted the direction of the captain's departure, responding loudly, "Yes. Captain Phineas. Frankie knows." Captain Phineas turned his head thoughtfully and glanced at the young man. Just then, another investor happened to meet him, and the two of them chatted for a few words before going to the restaurant together. Chapter 6. Sailing Away. You are listening at novel full.audio. All things in heaven and earth are wonderful, but the most wonderful thing is that people have the freedom to choose between good and evil. Vincent Faust. In the cabin of the Victoria, a beautiful woman wearing a formal dress with a camera is walking around. She is Miss Lorena, a well-known journalist from Watanabe. This time, she will record the entire voyage of the Victoria, her luxury, comfort, and unparalleled beauty. Now it's time for dinner, and Miss Lorena is still diligently recording every detail of Victoria. The luxury and delicacy of the Victoria are unparalleled. Although it has been introduced to some extent in magazines, Miss Lorena never guessed that the ship was equipped with an indoor swimming pool, imitating the Vincent family's treehouse library. While the Vincent family is ancient, in addition to the Vincent estate, there is also the Dobia library, which is a cleverly hollowed-out giant Dobia tree. The Dobia tree is one of the hardest trees in the world, the largest of which can grow up to tens of meters and has a hardness comparable to steel. No one knows how this tree was constructed by excavation. The Vincent family has been fond of collecting books throughout history, hence the name Dobia Library, which is also the place with the most books in Christian City and is known as the Tree of Wisdom. And it is said that this Dobian tree has not died and is still growing. Some people say they have seen tender buds grow inside the tree. Miss Lorena has already visited it, and although she has not seen the real Dobian library, what it really looks like, this stunning Victoria must have also restored the internal structure of the Tree of Wisdom to this point. The cleverly carved circular staircase, also built by the Dobian tree, carries the ancient cultural patterns of the Vincent family, giving people a simple and sacred atmosphere full of the breath and atmosphere of the Mother of the Earth. While visiting, Miss Lorena was even more surprised that the library of the Victoria not only restored the structure of the Vincent family's Dobia library, but also replicated many rare books there. Along the way, she couldn't stop taking photos, documenting her luxurious beauty in detail from different perspectives. Not only that, on this great Victoria, there is also a replica of the royal bathroom and a cleverly crafted elevator by craftsmen. Of course, the crew also introduced to her that this cruise ship not only has these, but also an entertainment hall gym. The carpet in the first-class cabin of the Victoria is handmade wool carpet made from the best materials selected by the royal family, accompanied by high-end furniture made of high-quality wood as tribute from the nobility. The Victoria's wall panels are also meticulously carved with royal patterns. It has to be said that the Victoria combines the royal culture of various countries, and every corner showcases its luxurious and profound artistic value. Combining the unique imperial court pastries of the 5 countries and the exotic tribute of black tea, the second-class cabin of the Victoria, although slightly inferior in materials compared to the first-class cabin, is also made of wood used by the royal family. The same applies to the third-class cabin. Although the materials have changed, the living environment and lounge are equally luxurious and upscale. Chapter 7. Voyage. You are listening at novel full.audio. Not only that, the first class of the Victoria has 3 dedicated elevators to serve passengers, while the second class has 1. Unfortunately, passengers in the third class can only climb stairs. Miss Lorena became more and more fascinated by her as she watched, and couldn't help but feel very sorry for her sister Tarina's failure to board the ship in time for some reason. If my sister were here, it would be great. The two of them could enjoy the unprecedented comfortable service of the Victoria, and together they could record her beauty and glory. In the luxurious restaurant, dozens of waiters dressed in tailcoats and white shirts, serving passengers with luxurious, delicious, and fragrant dishes to the fullest. Miss Lorena held up her camera and couldn't help but be even more amazed. Victoria's restaurant was framed with a special alloy, combined with a glass dome inlaid with gold, jade, and gemstones. The natural radiance poured out, and the gemstones reflected the radiance of the sun, shining like a Milky Way in the daytime. Miss Lorena raised her camera towards the glass dome of the Victoria restaurant, constantly adjusting its position. One after another, she recorded the luxurious glass dome, as well as the elegant crystal lights with a royal style. After taking these photos, Miss Lorena couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. As soon as she turned around, she saw Captain Phineas and immediately walked up in surprise and joy, shouting with great enthusiasm and excitement. "Oh my goodness! Captain Phineas, congratulations on becoming the captain of this luxurious cruise ship." Captain Phineas was also taken aback. It seemed that the person was Miss Lorena, and he welcomed her with a smile on his face. First, he saluted as a gentleman, and then half-jokingly joked, saying, "Nice to meet you, Miss Lorena. Are you here to prepare an interview with me, an alcoholic uncle?" Miss Lorena also smiled upon hearing this. Captain Phineas is not a drunken uncle, not only young and promising, but also has this rich knowledge of navigation. Everyone knows his sailing achievements, and there have been journalists interviewing him to write many interesting reports. Moreover, he is now the most famous captain. Miss Lorena also really wants to interview Captain Phineas. Captain Phineas is very gentlemanly and romantic, and his speech is witty and interesting. Miss Lorena looked at Captain Phineas with some shyness and smiled, saying, "Captain Phineas, you're joking. She's just so beautiful. Lorena sincerely congratulates you. Victoria's luxury is so unexpected." Captain Phineas, upon hearing her say this, felt very happy and immediately became interested. He was very excited and shared with Miss Lorena. "Oh, my God! God knows how excited I am to be the captain of this voyage. It's my honor, Miss Lorena. Oh, by the way, Miss Lorena, do you know when the Victoria was built?" Chapter 8. Voyage. You are listening at novel full.audio. At that moment, a middle-aged man dressed in a royal dress suddenly appeared behind Captain Phineas, interrupting his words. He appears to be in his 40s, but he smiles kindly, which cannot conceal the hint of cunning in his eyes. As soon as Miss Lorena saw him, she felt that this person was very complicated. The middle-aged man introduced him to Miss Lorena. The Victoria was built by royal craftsmen of Christian, and was also invested by members of the royal families of Christian City, the Kingdom of Dantrian, the Brecht Empire, Leotis City, and Zakis City. It was jointly invested by nobles, knights, churches, warriors, and merchants. The Victoria combines numerous rich artistic cultures, and its beauty is truly amazing. It was obvious that his words interrupted Captain Phineas's excitement. Captain Phineas had intended to share some shipbuilding stories about the Victoria, but he did not continue. Upon seeing this, Miss Lorena, who is a journalist, asked with some dissatisfaction, "Excuse me, are you?" The man took a step forward and first reached out his hand to shake hands with Captain Phineas, saying, "Hello, journalist Lorena, hello Captain Phineas." Although he said hello to himself first, he finally reached out and expressed his desire to shake hands with Lorena. Lorena was very dissatisfied and did not show any intention of reaching out to shake hands with him. The atmosphere suddenly became very awkward, and Captain Phineas quickly said, "Hello, Mr. Raphael." Captain Phineas quickly stepped forward and shook hands with Mr. Raphael again, and introduced himself to Miss Lorena. "Miss Lorena, please allow me to introduce you to Mr. Raphael, who is one of the representatives of the Victoria investors. This time, Mr. Raphael will represent the 12 investors in attendance." After Captain Phineas finished speaking, Mr. Raphael extended his hand again and smiled, saying, "Miss Lorena, it's my first time meeting you. It's really nice to meet you." Upon hearing Captain Phineas's words, Lorena immediately perked up and quickly put down her camera. She smiled and reached out to shake hands with him, saying, "Mr. Raphael, nice to meet you. You can call me Lena. I am the journalist accompanying the Victoria." Mr. Raphael smiled and withdrew his hand, looking at Miss Lorena in her glamorous attire. He cursed inwardly at the group of prostitutes from the newspaper, mocking her in a tone. "Miss Lorena, I am looking forward to your attendance at tonight's banquet, as not everyone is honored to experience such luxurious service." Miss Lorena also recognized the meaning behind Mr. Raphael's words, and it was obvious that he was very dissatisfied with his appearance here. But Miss Lorena, considering the needs of her work, although unhappy in her heart, did not say anything, only in a very awkward guest tone. I will attend, Mr. Raphael." Raphael is a businessman, and it is obvious that businessmen generally dislike journalists because they expose their dirty transactions like annoying flies everywhere. Chapter 9. Voyage. You are listening at novel full.audio. Captain Phineas was also very helpless. There was nothing he could help here, but he secretly portrayed Mr. Raphael as a villain in his heart. After all, Mr. Raphael is the investor of the Victoria. Without Mr. Raphael's investment, this stunning Victoria would not have been built, and Captain Phineas would not have been able to become the captain of this ship. Fortunately, Miss Lorena didn't seem to take it to heart and instead invited Captain Phineas and Mr. Raphael to dine together. As a businessman, Raphael naturally refused, and Captain Phineas breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Mr. Raphael's refusal. Just now, he was worried that the two of them might not be compatible. On one side are the beautiful journalist Miss Lorena, and on the other side are the investors of the Victoria. If they argue, I will be in a dilemma. At the dining table, Captain Phineas and Miss Lorena had a great conversation, discussing many things about the Victoria, even from shipbuilding to murals. The murals of the Victoria combine the art of 5 countries. Captain Phineas is not very knowledgeable about art, but Miss Lorena is very excited when she says this, just like he tells the story of shipbuilding. Captain Phineas listened to Miss Lorena's story in confusion. Miss Lorena's eloquence was very good, and soon Captain Phineas could understand a bit. For example, the knightly demeanor believed in by the Brecht Empire, so there are works of art related to the Brecht Empire, such as murals on suspended ceilings, which are mostly famous wars in history. The works of art in the cities of Dantirian, Zakshis, and Laird are more inclined towards their beliefs. Dantirian was closer to the legendary Elf Island in her early years, and they deeply believed in the Mother Earth. Zakshis, Christian, and Laird cities worship different gods. Miss Lorena shared many insights with Captain Phineas, who also admired these vast and profound cultures. He greatly admired Miss Lorena's talent. Captain Phineas has been drifting at sea for too long, and he has no idea what happened on land. The stories Miss Lorena told him were really amazing. So Captain Phineas felt very embarrassed and made another appointment with Miss Lorena, to meet here tomorrow afternoon. Captain Phineas and Miss Lorena bid farewell reluctantly, and it must be said that Miss Lorena also greatly enjoyed the sailing stories told by Captain Phineas. Miss Lorena left the restaurant and immediately went back to her room to search for the manuscript and write with pen and ink. Letter to Priscilla Trina on March 1, 1455. Dear Trina sister, guess who I ran into today? It's Captain Phineas whom you interviewed. I'm very sorry for your experience. Lorena feels very sorry for her sister. I didn't expect you to miss this boarding trip. Sister Trina, I met Mr. Raphael, one of the 12 representatives of the Victoria Investment Association, on board the ship. He is such a bad-mouthed jerk, and indeed merchants are not good people. Sister, Lorena really feels sorry for you. You really should come and take a look. The beauty of the Victoria is breathtaking, do you know, sister? The Victoria is a miracle. Perhaps war will not continue, I have seen the art and faith of every country cleverly integrated here. She's amazing, sister. This incredibly brilliant beauty is truly stunning. Lorena can hardly express all of this, I really hope my sister can also board the ship together. Love you. Pusjun Lorena. Chapter 10. Ball. You are listening at novel full.audio. Respect the deceased, we are still alive, we can still love, we should die in the dance. Vincent Faust's, the palace and the Pope. The dance tonight was very lively, with most of the 12 representatives who invested in the Victoria attending. Only 2 of them were present. One was Mr. Vincent Faust, representing the nobility. As we all know, Mr. Vincent Faust is not only a nobleman, but also a very famous writer. For Miss Lorena, Mr. Vincent Faust's absence was undoubtedly a regret. Miss Lorena had been looking forward to it for a while, but unfortunately she couldn't achieve her wish. Fortunately, Mr. Vincent Faust and his daughter Miss Alice Ritasha came to attend the ball instead of his father. The other one is Mr. Lewandowski, who represents the royal family. Although he did not attend, his son, Lewandowski Jonathan, came to represent his father at this banquet. Miss Lorena also wore a very beautiful blue dress to attend the banquet. She held a camera in one hand and a leather notebook in the other, which was very small but well suited to her identity as a journalist. Although it was already night, the Victoria was still brightly lit, and people enjoyed the high-quality red wine made from grapes picked by nobles from various countries at banquets. They gathered together and praised the comfort and beauty of the Victoria. Miss Lorena carefully recorded the banquet, and this time she will report everything on board the Victoria to the outside world, including the banquet. As she walked around, Miss Lorena suddenly saw a petite and lovely figure, which was the sweet and charming Miss Alice Ritasha. It's Vincent Faust's daughter. Miss Alice Ritasha was dressed in a luxurious purple dress, draped in a dark golden cloak with patterns embroidered with gold thread, which was unique to the Vincent family. Her short boots on her feet and long gloves on her hands were also the same. Not only were the materials very smooth and soft, but they were also embroidered with gold and silver threads, very luxurious and beautiful. As soon as the reporter saw her, Lena was immediately captivated by her gaze. She was so beautiful. Miss Alice Ritasha wore 4 rings and 1 ring on her left hand, and Miss Lorena had studied the history of the Vincent family. The style of the ring on Miss Alice Ritasha's left hand is very ancient, and the gemstone on it is incredibly emerald green. It is said to be a relic of the elf tribe, while the other rings are made of gold, silver, and agate. Even the necklace around Miss Alice Ritasha's neck was made of light purple high-quality pearls. The pendant in the middle is exquisitely carved, making it a round piece of high-quality violet jade, set on a silver base and embellished with the unique artistic style of the Vincent family. Journalist Lorena was stunned. It was her first time encountering such a noble family with such noble bloodline. The Vincent family is a mysterious family, and their clothing is all a work of art. Anyone who takes a glance at them will be fascinated by them. Miss Lorena approached enthusiastically and greeted, "Hello Miss Alice, it's an honor to meet you here."